Picture this. You're out on the water, first light. You tie on your favorite lure, and then you perform the ritual. You grab that little bottle of secret sauce, the garlic, the crawfish, the shad, and you carefully squeeze a big old blob onto the bait. You're confident. You've just given yourself an edge. But what if that ritual, that deeply ingrained habit, is the exact reason your line stays slack? What if I told you the scent you're adding to your lure is actually repelling fish? In this video, we're going to expose a truth that the scent industry doesn't want you to know. And I promise, by the end of this, you'll understand why that fisherman next to you, the one using nothing but a plain plastic worm, is outfishing you 10 to 1. So let me ask you this before we dive in. Do you believe scents are a game changer or a total gimmick? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I want to see where you stand before we blow this whole thing wide open. For decades, we've been told the same story. A fish's sense of smell is thousands of times more powerful than ours, so adding a natural scent to an artificial lure just makes sense, right? It's supposed to mask human odors, trigger a feeding response, and make fish hold on longer. The fishing industry has built a multi-million-dollar empire on this belief, with aisles in tackle shops dedicated to gels, sprays, and marinades. It's become a core part of the fishing culture. Your grandpa did it, your dad did it, and every pro on television seems to be slathering their baits in some magic potion. This isn't just about logic. It's about confidence. Applying scent feels like you're taking an extra step, like you're covering all your bases. It's a precast ritual that makes us feel more prepared. But this habit, this blind faith in a bottle, has stopped us from asking the most important question. Are we actually helping, or are we hurting our chances? Let's start with the most obvious culprit, and it has nothing to do with what's in the bottle. It has to do with your hands. Think about your morning routine before you even got to the lake. You might have put on sunscreen. You probably used bug spray. Maybe you stopped for gas on the way. Every single one of those things leaves a chemical residue on your skin. When you handle your lure and then apply the scent, you're not just adding attractant, you're mixing it with a cocktail of fish-repelling chemicals. Things like DEET from bug spray are notoriously offensive to fish. They can detect it in parts per million. Your expensive shad scent isn't masking the DEET, it's just delivering it directly to the fish on a silver platter. Now let's talk about the scent itself, and the idea of too much of a good thing. We anglers tend to think more is better. If a little bit of garlic is good, then a giant glob of it must be great. But imagine walking into a small room where someone has sprayed an entire can of air freshener. It's not pleasant. It's overwhelming and unnatural. A fish's sense of smell is incredibly sensitive. They follow faint scent trails to find food. When your lure drops into the water exuding a chemical cloud that is 1,000 times stronger than any natural bait, it doesn't register as food. It registers as a threat, a danger, something that is completely out of place in their environment. It's the equivalent of a blaring alarm bell, sending them scattering in the opposite direction. This leads us to our next point, the unnatural presentation of scent. Imagine a real injured shad in the water. It releases a subtle, intermittent trail of scent and blood as it moves. Now look at your plastic worm coated in a thick, slimy gel. It leaves a constant, uniform, and powerful slick in the water. This is not how natural prey behaves or smells. Predatory fish are masters at identifying things that are off. A consistent, overpowering scent trail is a massive red flag. They've survived for millions of years by being cautious. Your lure, reeking like a garlic factory, is screaming, "I am not real," from 100 feet away. Let's keep digging into this idea of being unnatural. Think about matching the hatch with your lure color and size. You wouldn't throw a giant bright pink swim bait when the bass are feeding on tiny natural colored minnows, right? So why do we ignore that same logic when it comes to scent? People will fish a lake where the primary forage is bluegill, but they'll douse their lures in a crawfish scent because they heard it works somewhere else. To a fish, that's like smelling a cheeseburger in the middle of the ocean. It's confusing, it's out of place, and it makes them suspicious. Using a scent that doesn't match the local forage is one of the fastest ways to make a fish reject your lure. Another huge factor we often ignore is the scent's base ingredient. Many cheaper attractants use a petroleum jelly or oil base to make the scent stick to the lure. While it does the job of staying on, it also creates a tiny, unnatural oil slick in the water around your bait. Fish, especially in clear water, can see this. They see the rainbow sheen that comes off the lure as it moves. This visual cue is another massive red flag. It's a signal of pollution, of something man-made. So even if the scent itself is appealing, the carrier oil it's mixed with could be visually spooking the fish before they even get close enough to smell it. And what about those human scents we think we are masking? Things like nicotine from smokers or the soap you used that morning. We apply a fishing scent, thinking it will cover it up. But it doesn't work that way. It's more like mixing two different smells together. The fish doesn't just smell garlic, it smells garlic and soap. It smells shad and nicotine. This combination is even more alien to them than the human scent alone. At least the human scent might be something they encounter regularly near docks or shorelines, but a shad that smells like a cigarette? That's a signal to flee, not to feed. Let's consider the water temperature and its effect. On a hot summer day, scent disperses very quickly and widely. That heavy dose you applied creates an enormous scent cloud. On a cold day, in cold water, that same scent congeals and disperses very slowly, barely leaving a trail at all. Most anglers use the same amount of scent year-round, regardless of the conditions. They're not thinking about how the environment is changing the effectiveness and presentation of their chosen attractant. In the summer, you're likely overpowering the zone, and in the winter, you might as well not be using any at all. Here's a tough pill to swallow. Some attractants contain ingredients that are actually repellents. To mass-produce these scents cheaply, some companies use chemical preservatives or artificial compounds to mimic natural smells. A fish's nose is a complex chemical lab. It can easily tell the difference between a real organic compound from a dying minnow and a cheap lab-created chemical knockoff. While it might smell like shad to our dumb human nose, to a bass, it might smell like a chemical plant. This is especially true with some of the wild novelty scents on the market. Stick to the basics, and even then, be cautious. Let's turn the mirror on ourselves. The biggest problem with scent might be psychological. We get a bite a few seconds after applying a new scent, and we immediately give the scent all the credit. For the rest of the day, it's our magic juice. The next trip, we use it and get skunked, but we don't blame the scent. We blame the weather, the barometric pressure, or just bad luck. This is called confirmation bias. We look for evidence that proves what we already believe and ignore everything that contradicts it. The scent becomes a confidence crutch, and it stops us from focusing on what really matters: location, lure presentation, and timing. Think about the salt in soft plastics. For years, major companies have impregnated their plastic baits with salt. Why? Because studies have shown that bass will hold onto a salty bait for a fraction of a second longer, giving you more time to set the hook. This is a subtle, proven enhancement. Now, compare that to a lure dripping with a slimy, powerful gel. The salt is an integrated taste and texture. The gel is an external, overwhelming odor. Many anglers are adding overpowering scents to baits that already have a proven, subtle attractant built right in. You're essentially screaming over a whisper, and in fishing, the whisper is almost always more effective. Let's talk about negative cues. Fish don't just use scent to find food, they use it to detect danger. When another fish is attacked by a predator, it releases a fear scent, an alarm chemical that warns other fish in the area to get out. What if some of the compounds in your artificial scent are too similar to these alarm chemicals? You might think you're ringing the dinner bell, but you could actually be sounding the air raid siren. The fish aren't ignoring your lure. They are actively running away from it because you've tricked them into thinking a predator is on the hunt. Consider the application process again. You take your lure, which you've handled, and dip it into the bottle of scent. Or you use the dauber to paint it on. What you're also doing is contaminating your entire bottle of scent with the oils, sunscreen, and bug spray from your hands and the lure. After just a few trips, that bottle of pure crawfish formula is now a toxic soup of everything you've touched. Each time you use it, you're reapplying that contaminated mixture, making the problem worse and worse over time. The bottle itself becomes a repository for repellents. Now let's talk about a scenario. You're fishing a drop shot. The whole point is to keep the bait suspended and subtly quivering in front of a fish's face, enticing a bite from a neutral or negative fish. Now you add a heavy glob of scent. As the lure sits there, it's leaching a massive unmoving cloud of odor. A real bait fish doesn't do that. It's another unnatural signal. For finesse techniques that rely on subtlety and realism, adding a powerful artificial scent is completely counterproductive. It undermines the entire purpose of the presentation. Have you ever noticed how some scents leave a residue on your lure that's hard to get off? Some oil-based or gel-based formulas can actually dull the color and finish of your bait. It can reduce the flash of a spinnerbait blade or change the subtle pearlescent color of a soft plastic swim bait. You might be attracting a fish with scent, only to have them get close and be put off by the weird, hazy film covering what should be a realistic-looking lure. You're solving one problem while creating another. Here's a simple experiment I want you to try. Next time you're out, rig up 2 identical rods with the exact same lure and line. On one lure, apply your favorite scent. Leave the other one completely clean. In fact, wash it with non-scented soap first. Fish both rods for a few hours, alternating them. I'm willing to bet that on many days, the clean, unscented lure will get just as many, if not more, bites. This simple test removes the guesswork and the psychology. The results might shock you and save you a lot of money in the long run. Let's also think about the cumulative effect on a spot. If you're fishing a small specific area like a brush pile or a dock piling, and you keep casting a heavily scented lure into it, you're saturating that area with an unnatural chemical. After a dozen casts, the entire spot smells artificial. Any fish that moves into that area is immediately met with a wall of this strange odor. You're not just making your lure less appealing. You might be making the entire fishing spot less productive, effectively burning it with your attractant. The myth of making them hold on longer needs a closer look. Yes, some scents, particularly salt, have been shown to make a fish hold a bait for an extra second. But a thick, slimy scent gel can also make your lure feel, well, thick and slimy. It changes the texture. A fish that engulfs a soft plastic worm expects a certain texture. When it gets a mouthful of weird, slippery gel, it may spit it out even faster because it feels wrong. The texture can be just as much of a repellent as the overpowering smell. Another point is the simple act of reapplication. Every 15 or 20 minutes, many fishermen will reel in a perfectly good cast just to put more juice on their bait. This means less time with your lure in the water in the strike zone. Over the course of an 8-hour day, this can add up to a significant amount of lost fishing time. You're so focused on the scent that you're forgetting the #1 rule of fishing. You can't catch a fish if your line isn't in the water. The obsession itself becomes the problem. What about scents designed to provoke a reaction or territorial strike, not a feeding strike? Anglers use them on reaction baits like crankbaits or spinner baits. But this doesn't make sense. A reaction strike is an instinctual, split-second decision based on movement, flash, and vibration. A fish doesn't have time to smell the lure, and decide if it's food. It just attacks. Adding scent to a fast-moving reaction bait is often pointless, and at worst, the unnatural oil slick it leaves in its wake could spook a following fish just as it was about to commit. So, what's the final word here? I'm not saying all scents are useless all the time, but I am saying that the way 99% of anglers use them is fundamentally flawed. We use too much, we mix them with repellents, we use the wrong ones at the wrong times, and we rely on them as a crutch instead of focusing on good technique. We treat them like a magic bullet when, in reality, they are a highly specialized tool that is more likely to do harm than good if used incorrectly. The key isn't more scent, it's being smarter about if, when, and how you use it. Subtlety is everything. So, let's bring it all home. We've talked about how the sunscreen and bug spray on your hands can turn your attractant into a repellent. We've discussed how using way too much scent is like screaming in a library. It's unnatural and scares everything away. We've seen how the wrong scent, or scents with cheap chemical bases, can be a massive red flag to a cautious fish. The most critical takeaway, the real plot twist here is this. The problem isn't necessarily fish scent itself. The problem is us. It's our application, our reliance on it, and our more is better mindset. Understanding this can fundamentally change your approach to fishing. It frees you to focus on what truly matters, finding the fish and presenting your bait perfectly. You can stop worrying if you have the right flavor and start concentrating on your cast, your retrieve, and feeling that subtle bite. Thank you so much for watching and for being willing to challenge some old-school thinking. If this gave you a new perspective, hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed for more content that cuts through the noise. Now for my final question, and I really want to hear your take on this in the comments. After hearing all this, are you going to throw your bottle of scent in the trash, or are you just going to change how you use it? Let me know.